Welcome to this talk. This talk is focusing on the writer of this book that I hope that many of you have read in Swedish because it's been out now for some time. I'm meeting people all over Sweden who have read this book and taken it to their hearts and who, like me, feel that this book is addressed and written to them because it's precisely what it is. It's written for me, for you, for us who are not in Ukraine. And Victoria Amelina, who wrote this book, is one of the victims of this war when she was hit by a missile in Kramatorsk. We will talk about her, we will talk about the book, but we will link it to what's going on right now and to the work of the two guests that I have with me and that I would like to introduce, who will be a little bit like my companions, I hope, through Victoria's work, through the writing process of this book, but also through what's the focus of this book, and that is women who make a difference in this war and the documentation of what's actually going on and how this war affects Ukrainian society, beyond documenting war crimes, beyond reporting journalism. It's documenting in the widest sense. And with me on stage, I have Tetyana Teren, who has been until recently head of the office of PEN Ukraine, who has now gone back to studying and has ideas about civic engagement of her own, and has a background as a journalist. She was part of the team that edited what Victoria left on her computer after she was killed. Because, of course, the result in this book is the result of an editing process. And with me, I also have Oleksandra Matvijtjuk, who is a human rights activist, and her organization, the Center for Civil Liberties in Kyiv, is also the Nobel Prize Peace Laureate, as all of you know, 2022. And this talk is a cooperation between, my name is Stefan Ingvarsson, I work as an analyst at the Swedish Institute for International Affairs, and this talk is a cooperation between us and the Ukrainian Institute in Sweden and the publishing house Ersatz. Let's describe Victoria. As a person, you, Tetyana, just told me that Oleksandra met her at your birthday party the first time. You both knew her. You both have your own impressions of her as a person and as a writer and colleague. If you would give us your personal view. Tetyana, let's start with you.
Thank you, Stefan. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy and honored to be here at this festival. And, you know, it's always very emotional for me to speak on behalf of Victoria. It's already my 10th or maybe 15th event where we present this book, and already second in Sweden. But Stefan, I should say that it's always, I feel quiet when you moderate our conversations, usually. Before I start speaking about Victoria as a friend, writer, and documentator of war crimes, you know, I'd like to read one excerpt from this book, because today I woke up with this thought that, okay, there was something about Göteborg in this book. And I wrote to our amazing editorial team with this question that, do you remember this like place in the book about this exact city? And we found this place, and I remember now that in that manuscript Victoria left for us, she did it 5 days before her death, this missile attack on Kramatorsk. She sent this manuscript to me, as usually, you know, Victoria had a great sense of humor, and she wrote to me that I know that you preserve many manuscripts of Ukrainian writers, especially writer soldiers. So please just download this manuscript, and if something happens with me, please stay in touch with my husband and do everything to publish this work. So in that manuscript, there was only one short sentence about Göteborg, and then our editorial team, and especially Alex Amelina, Victoria's husband, decided to check this short sentence, this note, to check her archive and to see whether Victoria maybe left something else about that concrete moment. And then I understood that, okay, Victoria had to be here at this festival in 2022, but she decided to go to Izum, Kharkiv region, just after liberation of this part of Ukraine. And I'd like to read you this paragraph from the book which we found in her archive. The Ukrainian army liberated Izum on September 10, 2022. On the same day, Casanova, this is one of the heroines in this book, wrote in the work chat, "Who wants to join the mission to the liberated Izum?" Then, I think, as I'm going to be at the book fair in Göteborg, Sweden, speaking on an amazing panel with my fellow Ukrainian writers, Oksana Zabushko, Natalka Snedanko, and the former political prisoner and writer Stanislav Aseyev. But more than anything, I want to be on the first Truth Hounds mission to the liberated town of Izum. What if I cancel my participation in the book fair? Would the organizers and colleagues understand? I write to one of the co-organizers, Sofia Chelak, and get back a video message I'm afraid to open. It seems like she might be yelling at me, but Sofia is not yelling at me, or maybe she is exclaiming with remarkable passion, "Of course, you should go to Izum. This might be the most important thing you do." I smile. It feels so good to be understood. I cancel my trip to Göteborg, Sweden, and plan my trip to Izum, Ukraine. The elegant suitcase and dresses will have to wait. I pack the backpack I bought for hiking, but have used for my trips to the war zone since 2014, first as a writer and now as a war crimes researcher. I know there is no electricity, running water, or heating in Izum yet, so I pack snacks, candies for kids, warm clothes, a sleeping bag, and 3 power banks. So you will find this paragraph in the book, but when I read it just 2 hours ago, when my friend sent me this excerpt, I started feeling and thinking that here Victoria is with us, and now she has this event and this presentation here in Göteborg for the first time. But returning to a question, I will try to be short in my answer. Usually when I think about Victoria Amelina, I think about 4 main features she had and she has for me still in my life. First of all, this is a huge, enormous empathy. You know, in her first novel, The Fall Syndrome, she has a hero who has enormous empathy to everyone and everything around him. And the same was about Victoria, because she always tried to find someone she can help in her life. And especially I remember, of course, February 2022, when she wrote to me. She was abroad during first days of the full-scale invasion, and she wrote to me that, "Tetyana, if you need like place to stay in Lviv, please go directly to my house." And I spent 3 weeks in March 2022 in her apartment in Lviv. So this is about empathy. The second important thing for me is her dedication to people and to her work, to literature and to Ukraine. You know, it was a person who always had this thought that everything is not enough. You know, she went to all these dangerous places in Ukraine, but it was not enough. She was volunteering. She always had many people, like dozens people in her apartment in Lviv. She was collecting money. She was writing essays in English. She was traveling a lot abroad, and she was a great advocate for Ukraine. But always she said, okay, but it's not enough. And she was trying to find like new fields for her work and passion in Ukraine. One more thing for me, it's her sense of humor. I already mentioned it. And you know, usually when we meet with her friends or colleagues, or even when we were working on this book during 1 year, all the time, we just remember her voice and her jokes. So usually we have the same like funny conversations, and because of that, this feeling that Victoria is still with us through all these jokes and funny situations. And the last thing, the last feature I'd like to mention is her, you know, this possibility, this talent to inspire other people. It was the same with me, because usually it was at night when Victoria started writing her emails, messages, trying to, you know, to create these chats between different people and to share her ideas. She had millions of different ideas, and even now, when I launch my new projects, when I'm working on some new books, I can add this sentence that the author of the idea of this project is Victoria Amelina, because even now I have this feeling, I have this motivation and inspiration that it's thanks to Victoria I have this idea and I can work on this idea. So these are main things, but it's, you know, I have the same feeling. It's not enough to describe who Victoria was in my life and in Ukraine.
I'm very glad that, I mean, because we have the book, a lot of what you're describing is there. The empathy, the dedication, the humor is also there. And she is inspirational to us as readers. Oleksandra, so you met her in this moment when she decided to start documenting, when she entered the field that your organization is also working in. What kind of moment was this, and who was she when you got to know her?
After several years since large-scale war started, I got message in Facebook from Victoria Amelina, and she wrote to me that I'm preparing the book about women in war, and I want to join your work. I will be just accompanied you wherever you go, may I? And I immediately responded to her, no problem. In 2 days, I'm going to advocacy tour to promoting the Special Tribunal on Aggression. You are free to join. 1 second, and she responded, I'm on the board. And I still can't think that she decided to go, because it was very difficult and exhausted and emotional advocacy trip in several countries. It was June 2022, after I was staying in Kiev while Russian troops tried to circle it, and I wasn't okay. So we became friends, and she not just accompanied me, she spoke in Parliament of United Kingdom. She tell what's going on to French parliamentarians. So she was very vocal and very convincing, and we was like a team. And this was the start of beautiful friendship. And I always told that large-scale war presented me a friend, and large-scale war take my friend away. Last time when we had the long conversation, it was in Norway in World Expression Forum. She went here to receive the award postmortem award to children writer Volodymyr Vakulenko, because as you know from the book, or will know from the book, she was a person who worked on his case. This children writer was abducted and tortured to death by Russians when they occupied Kharkiv region, and she found his diary, which he was written in occupation, and she made an enormous effort to publish it. So she came to World Expression Forum to receive his postmortem award. And it was an opportunity for us to have a pretty long conversation. And she told about ideas. As Tanya mentioned, she always have a lot. And I remember that I told her that you are documenting war crimes, you are writing books, you are volunteering, you are doing another things. Probably it's enough for one person. And she answered that she feel this pressure of time, and all her efforts, it's not enough. I think it's very unfair that we are here in Gothenburg without her. I still can't get used to this, and it's very symbolically that 2 years later I came to World Expression Forum to receive a postmortem award for Victoria Amelina.
How did that feel? I mean, I understand how it feels, but if you could say something about being there.
I made a speech in this World Expression Forum mentioning what Victoria was fighting for. And I told at the end that despite everything, this story is a life-affirming story, because dramatic times raise hope. Because when freedom is denied, it's become powerfully break out through the every concrete individuals like Victoria. And I told that now I know what hope is about. Because hope, it's not a confidence that everything will be fine. There is no guarantees in our life. But hope is a deep understanding that all our efforts have a huge meaning.
This book is in a way remarkable in the sense that I know a lot of us who are at the receiving end here in Sweden and in other European countries during the spring of 22 and the summer of 22, we were contacting people we knew in Ukraine, urging for them to write, or looking for texts, looking for ways, something to publish. And a lot of the translators who were available, newspapers, were looking for it. But most Ukrainian writers, most people we knew in Ukrainian culture would say, this is not the time. I need to, work with the refugees or deliver things to the front line or go fight myself. And so this was, I think, judging from our end, the dominant reaction of people, that you felt that the sword was mightier than the pen, that this is not the time for writing, that this, at the same time we understood that everything is, your survival is also dependent on our solidarity, and we need these voices, and she understood perfectly, because what's special about this book, when I said it's written for me, for you, for us, it's that it's written in English, it's written for a foreign audience, and she understood this immediately. Could you give us a little bit of a context here? Why you think she understood this, and a little bit about how this understanding that the pen is also a type of sword was established among the people that you know?
As you know from this book, from the first chapter, Victoria was in Egypt with the family at the beginning of full-scale war. And you know, usually when I tell this story to the foreign audience, people could be like surprised because of that, because Victoria decided to go back to Ukraine from Egypt and then from Europe. So she decided to leave her son in Krakow, Poland, and go to Lviv, to Ukraine to help everyone. And you know, since I lived with her and her friends and relatives at the beginning of the big war, I remember that period of time in her life and how she was trying to find her new role and new voice in Ukrainian society and just in the world. So at the beginning, she was trying to collect money, to collect sometimes medicine. We worked together in the volunteering warehouse in Lviv. She was trying to help people, especially from the Donetsk region. We have New York town in Ukraine, and she is connected to this town, and she invited people from this town to live in her apartment in Lviv. Of course, she started writing a lot of essays in English because she was really great and talented in writing in English. Then she started writing poetry just in 2022. And then in May 2022, there was a very important moment in this, you know, process of finding her role, because she met the Truth Hounds organization. This is also a human rights organization which has been working with documentation of war crimes since 2014. So she visited their training and understood, because she was talented and she had this feeling what could be helpful and useful during the times. She understood that, okay, I'd like to become a war crimes researcher, and maybe it could be a source for my future writing. And I know for sure that then she met Oleksandra, then we went together for the first time to the Kharkiv region. And I think all these like events, meetings and conversations like triggered her to understand that maybe she should write something new for her as a writer. And she decided to choose nonfiction. This is her first nonfiction book. And since she had some experience in writing in English, because she lived in the US for some time, she decided that, okay, it must be nonfiction book specifically for the foreign audience, because in Ukraine, on one hand, we know everything. We don't need to explain what's going on. And on the other hand, she was afraid to re-traumatize Ukrainians with all these events and voices we have in this book. So she started writing this book in English, thinking especially about the foreign audience in this context. And you know, this book has been translated into 17 languages at this current moment, and she didn't want to translate it into Ukrainian. And we decided inside our editorial team that maybe we will do it as Victoria wanted, only after Ukrainian victory, because now we want to spread her words and voice abroad for other countries and audiences in other countries.
Oleksandra, what could you add to this context, this change within her and this understanding that she needs to communicate with the outside world?
The needs, it's very obvious, because Ukraine was in shadow of Russian Empire for more than 3 centuries. People even in European countries know nothing about our culture, about our history, about us. They knew only something which Russia presented as an artificial created image of Ukraine and other former Soviet republics. So the needs, it's very understandable. I can explain this with one very visible example. In United States, there is a famous Metropolitan Museum, and in this museum. It is a paintings of Degas, and one of paintings which is titled Russian Dancers. It's images of several young women who are dancing in national clothes. But if you are Russian, you will come to this painting and you had clearly understanding that they are not Russian dancers, they're Ukrainian dancers, because they wear Ukrainian traditional clothes and this special covering with flowers, which in Ukraine is called vinok. So it's obvious for everyone, but who from our part of the globe. But when Ukrainian scientists sent letters and asked to do something with it, make some explanation that it's not Russian dancers, rename the title because it's not the Degas title, do something. It was totally ignored, and only after large-scale war started, this museum changed the title of the painting, and now it's called Dancers in Ukrainian Clothes. Probably they still think that they are Russian dancers, but they just wearing Ukrainian clothes. But it's a first important step, and that's why, because Russia tell about us so much through all the centuries, through different channels, it's a very visible need for people in Ukraine to return our voice back and to tell who we are, what is our history, what is our culture. Because when you probably follow this recent meeting of President Trump and President Putin in Alaska, Putin told that he has to liquidate the primary cause of this war. But primary cause of this war is our Ukrainian existence, because this war has genocidal character. Putin openly says there is no Ukrainian nation, there is no Ukrainian language, there is no Ukrainian culture. And Russian propagandists publicly tell what does it mean. It means that Ukrainians must be eradicated as Russians are killed. And that is why for 12 years, since the war started in February 2014, we have been documenting how this war is converted in horrible practice. When Russians physically exterminate active local people in occupied territories, mayors, journalists, children writers, musicians, teachers, priests, environmentalists, any active people of local communities, how they ban Ukrainian language and culture, how they destroyed and robbed Ukrainian cultural heritage. And when they take Ukrainian children to Russia, dozens of thousands of Ukrainian children, they put them in Russian education camps. They told them, you're not Ukrainian, you're Russian children. You have your families, your parents refused from you, and you will be adopted by Russian families who will bring you up as Russians. So being in the epicenter of this existential attack, for Victoria, it was very obvious that she has to use her talent and her understanding of foreign audience and her brilliant English, try to convey a message that we exist. We are not Russians. We are ancient nation who live in a young modern country which was created after the collapse of Soviet Union.
You two are also doing this. I mean, you are both frequently traveling abroad and speaking to people who have this lack of understanding. How do you prepare for this? How do you reflect on this role? Because it must be very different from the conversations you have with your friends and your colleagues in Ukraine, and then suddenly you leave this environment and you go on trips like this one, and you're sitting in front of people like us. So what kind of reflection do you have on this role?
Yeah, in my situation, it was not my choice because I am a cultural manager and I had a lot of things to do in Ukraine. And to be honest, I had the same feeling you described at the beginning when Ukrainians just wanted to stay home and don't move to like other directions. But my first trip was in May 2022, and then usually I had 2-3 trips every month. And my task was, as a representative of Pan-Ukraine and Ukrainian cultural and literary community, to explain what's going on in Ukraine, to tell about the situation with Ukrainian cultural community, with Ukrainian cultural heritage, to speak about our losses, if you speak about culture makers, if you speak about journalists. So it was a painful role, but I was trying to be as much useful as I can to ask to support Ukrainian culture as well, especially if you speak about Ukrainian cultural heritage. So I spent 2 years with these missions, and then after Victoria's death, she became like a symbolic figure for the whole Ukrainian culture in times of war. And I had a lot of speeches on behalf of her, and then this like big tour with this new book. So I feel huge responsibility to speak on behalf of Ukrainian artists and writers and journalists, my colleagues and my friends. And at this current moment, this is more than 200 Ukrainian culture makers and more than 100 Ukrainian journalists have been killed by Russia. And one more thing, which I opened for myself since 2022, I became much more attentive to culture and history of other countries I usually visit. I even really upset that I had not been so attentive to other people and their culture and their history. But now I'm trying to be very attentive. And if you speak about Sweden, I came in September 2022 for the first time. We had the Pan Congress in Uppsala, and it was really a big event with a huge Ukrainian program. And then I remember this, like my feeling that, okay, I was born in Poltava, maybe many like people here know about this city, and I grew up with this knowledge about our relationship, between Sweden and Ukraine, but I don't know enough about this relationship. So I started reading. I read just recently the diaries written by Astrid Lindgren, and it was very important reading for me because it's also a book about
The war diaries.
War
The war
diaries, yeah. And this is like the same feeling we have now, and she is so smart, in this book, speaking about Russia and about this colonial nature of this country. And I remember as well that it was my dream to meet Peter Englund in Uppsala, great Swedish historian who wrote his book about Poltava. And when we were speaking about the situation in Ukraine, he told me that, our countries have the same enemy during like centuries. So after that, I'm trying, to find all these sources to know better your history, your context here. And this is, very right moment to say our thank you to Swedish and Nordic partners, because that Sweden is among countries which has like given the biggest military support for Ukraine, but the same situation if you speak about culture or journalism. I know dozens of different programs of support for Ukrainian media and cultural spheres in our country. So I think, maybe this awful genocidal war drew attention to Ukraine, to our culture, to our roots, who we are, and it was one of the tasks for Victoria for sure. But on the other hand, it helps us as Ukrainians to know better the European history, the Swedish history, and to be more attentive to other countries and to other people. And of course, to be grateful to all people who support Ukraine and who know that this war is not just against Ukraine.
Well, in the spirit of Victoria Amelina, I would say about our support, we can do much more. Oleksandra, this role of going and being a spokesperson, how do you reflect on it?
It's necessity. I'm a human rights lawyer and I'm documenting war crimes since the war started. And this war started not in February 2022, but in February 2014. We was the first human rights organization who sent mobile groups to document war crimes in Crimea and then to the eastern regions in Ukraine. All these regions which I mentioned were occupied. Eastern region partially, Crimea completely, and we worked there on the field till the summer. Then I stopped this work because I understood it's too dangerous for our people to come to occupied territories, and we started to use another methods how collect information. We live in 21st century. We have digital tools which help us to restore what happened, to communicate with people under occupation, to collect evidence, to identify perpetrators, which we can't even dream 30 years ago during the Balkans War, for example. So we continue this work, and our main focus was the practice of illegal abduction, torture, sexual violence, and killing civilians in the occupied territories. I personally interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people who survived Russian captivity. They told me how they were beaten, raped, smashed into wooden boxes, their fingers were cut, their nails were torn away, their nails were drilled, they were electrically shocked through the genitalia. One young girl told me how she was forced to write with her own blood. Another woman told me how her eye was dragged out with a spoon. So it's really horrible stories. We sent numerous reports to UN, to Council of Europe, to OSCE. We're trying to communicate it with foreign governments. I'm rather professional human rights lawyer, but we got no result. And I became frustrated because I know that in this moment when I interviewed next survivor of sexual violence, the same horror is going on in 143 legal places of detention, which we identified even before large-scale war started. Because this is a system of terror which Russia imposed in order to save control over the occupied region, but nobody cares. My legal instruments are not working. I have no opportunities to stop this horror. And that's why we changed our approach. We understood that this system of peace and security is broken, and we need to return to the source of the system. And source of the systems are people. So we have to communicate with people to describe what's going on, to mobilize them to act, and to put the system to work properly. So we are doing this for 12 years, and advocacy became a significant part of our work, plus to documentation and other legal methods.
We don't have that much time left, but I asked both of you to let's continue the book. The book was never finished, but let's continue the book by telling us here, telling the story of two women that you know who are making a difference in the shadow of this war. Tetyana, who would you describe?
You know, since we are speaking on behalf of Victoria, I want to choose one of her heroines from this book. You have here.
Yeah, yes,
book
I had to
note.
post it on her.
Yeah, I'd like to introduce you to Yulia Kakula Daniluk. You will read about her in this book. This is my friend now, as all Victoria's heroines from this book. And I'd like to tell you about Yulia because this is like the second chapter of that excerpt I read at the beginning when Victoria went to Izum, Kharkiv region. She met Yulia for the first time. And Yulia is a librarian in a small village Kapitolivka near Izum, where Volodymyr Vakulenko, Ukrainian writer, lived before and under Russian occupation. And she was among people Victoria interviewed as a war crimes researcher in September 2022, when she learned that Volodymyr Vakulenko was kidnapped, when she found his diary of occupation, which we published with her later. And also she learned that Yulia Kakulia-Daniluk also was writing her diary of occupation, and she decided to include some chapters of this diary in this book. But I'm afraid that no one knew about about Yulia Kakulia-Daniluk before the full-scale invasion, but she is one of the best, the most dedicated librarians I know in Ukraine. And after this part of Ukraine was liberated, she started, applying for different grants and looking for support to rebuild and renew her library in this small village very close to the front line in Ukraine. And, I visited this place, this library many, many times because we're trying to be in contact with Volodymyr Vakulenko's family. And all the time I go to this library, I see this library, I see something new. I see new furniture, I see new books, a lot of people inside this library. Though, on the other hand, this small village is attacked by Russians, heavily attacked very often. And, maybe like some months ago, I read in the news that this village and Izium were attacked by Russians. And I wrote to Yulia that, Yulia, how are you after all these awful explosions and attacks? And she wrote to me very important words that, after Russian occupation, after the big war started in Ukraine, I understand that, okay, we can rebuild everything. The most important thing to have people alive. So she is ready to rebuild this library again and again for Ukrainian people. And, for me, she is one of the main heroines during these years and months of this awful war. And I'd like to say that one of our great authors, writers, Katerina Kalitko, when we went to some frontline territories and met Ukrainian librarians, she said that, in Ukraine, our libraries, our librarians, this is the second, the most important power after the Ukrainian army. So Yulia Kakulia-Daniluk is a part of this amazing, powerful energy we have in Ukraine and we have in our Ukrainian culture.
Thank you for sharing this. I mean, Oleksandra, I've left you with 1.5 minutes, but maybe you can give us an impression of someone.
I haven't read this book, I might confess. It's still difficult for me to read it, so I postpone it, probably also after the victory. That's why I want to share with you a story which I told yesterday to UN. I was in General Assembly to UN speaking about accountability for Russian war crimes, and I told about my colleague, Ukrainian journalist Victoria Roshina. She went to occupied territories in 2023 after 1 year of large-scale war started to collect evidence about legal detention, sexual violence, and killing civilians there, and she disappeared. We now know that she was abducted herself, severely tortured, and illegally transported to Russia, where she was kept without any official charges. We also know that she didn't receive medical care, and according to the words of her cellmate, her weight was approximately 30 kilograms. But we still have no idea how she died. When it happened, Russia refused for 6 months to return her body to the grieving parents, and when Russia did it, we found a body with a horrible sign of tortures, and several internal organs were missing: eyes, brain, and part of trachea. And when I tell the story to UN representatives and repeat it to you, because Victoria was also young, brave and dedicated to her profession. She was journalist, and she believed that this is her obligation to come to occupied territories to provide the truth, what's going on there. She believed that when we receive this information, we, despite who we are, politicians, ordinary people, start to take decisive actions and to take the right decisions. And with this thing, she can save thousands and thousands of lives, because truth matter. And you know what? I don't think that she is naive.
Thank you very much. We're 1 minute over time, but because Victoria Amelina was supposed to be here at the book fair, please join me in a few seconds of silence, and let's imagine her here in one of those chairs. Thank you to the organizers for allowing us for a few extra minutes. Thank you to our guests, and applause to them.